the challenger of Magnus Carlsen again. Won't waste my time with that. c5. So we're rooting for the official Slaggy Sparklehorse Lee Chess streaming opinion is we're rooting for Fabiano to win the tournament in Moscow and take out Magnus Carlsen. That is our official and I'm gonna pick him. I'm gonna pick Caruana to win the tournament on record. But I admit that the odds are long. I mean, I don't know what Vegas has the odds on. He's facing tall odds. It's a strong tournament. It's a single tournament. If I have to pick someone, I say Caruana. If I have to pick someone to take out Carlsen, Caruana has the best chance. But in a small sample size, in one match, in one tournament, I don't know who's going to win. So that's what we were talking about a little bit earlier. For those of you who might have joined us a little bit later. Okay, guys, back to the game. Unusual for white to allow c5 and c takes d. He's playing a symmetrical English with the queen on c2, which can't be real bad for white, right? I mean, this has to be okay for white. It's just not really critical. Normally white takes on c5 in these lines. Magnus is persona non grata. No, I don't dislike Magnus or anything. I don't dislike him. I'm a big fan of underdogs, and I'm just not a big fan of Magnus stylistically. I admit that Kramnik's not a lot more exciting, but I'd like to see a different world champion, kind of shake things up. So Caruana would be interesting, though. Caruana plays more dynamically, I think. He's a more interesting player. So he's our hope going into this March Candidates Tournament. I'd like to see Caruana do something in Moscow. Okay, so Bishop G5. Basically, it's like white is playing a sort of Grunfeld type of piece configuration without the fianchetto. I could play back to Hedgehog. We could go back to Hedgehog kind of land with Bishop E7, but it feels real. Yeah, it feels real wrong here. I guess Queen A5. The only thing I care about is that there's a great World Championship match, to be honest, guys. I don't want another Anand just collecting some money for going and playing Magnus a few games. You know, it's two lame, horrible World Championship matches where the challenger had no chance and probably doesn't even seem to care that much, honestly. So you gotta want someone who really has a chance, really believes they have a chance, really wants to play for more than just collecting the second place prize money. So who can do that, you know? Caruana is our number one hope. Outside hope, Aronian would suddenly wake up, you know, to the reality that he could become world champion and start caring enough to take his game to the next level, rather than just being a playboy or whatever he's been doing, according to CNN or whatever. Now I take on c3, or what? Guess we take on c3. Gonna play this funkadelic position with the double pawns in front of my king. Frothy Law. Is this like a tongue twister name? Why you shouldn't? I don't think you should trade queens there. It's not like a losing position for white, but I'm not sure that trading queens is the right idea here. Frothy Law Russ says, what's the best opening to learn for beginners? Good question. I think that you should start with e4 or d4 with white and play a simple kind of setup. And for black, you should probably play classically. d4, d5, e4, e5. Find something simple, you know, with white, like the bishop's opening or Joko piano, if you play e4, or the London system if you play d4. You play black, play something classical like the Queen's Gambit declined, maybe the Slav defense, and e4, e5. Classical openings, you can study master games in history, you can learn a lot. Don't try like to start with hyper-modern openings. It's kind of advanced, and I would recommend the classical stuff. Okay, e4. I want to get my king in the center at e7 at some point. Maybe use the g file for my rook. I want to get developed. How am I going to do that, you know? To uncastle here, a little tricky. I also need to play b6 and settle, you know, settle the situation. On the queen's side, which makes this a little tricky. He's got a4, a5, which could be a problem. Maybe b6, bishop b7. Really recommend like classical openings to start with. Now I started with like kind of English opening and Sicilian, and later on I had to go back and kind of learn the classical stuff. And I think it's easier to learn the classical openings first. Dr. Robotvinik, thank you for joining us here. So I wanted to play bishop b7. Now he's guarded e4. I want to get my f-rook. Talked about the g file. He's got g3 over there. So maybe in retrospect we'll do like bishop somewhere, followed by rook c8 and king f8, king e7, like this. The a-rook kind of waiting to sort of maybe defend, being a defensive piece for threats against like my a7 pawn, defense along the a file in general. What makes Magnus' style boring? Well, when you grew up in like the era of Kasparov, it's hard to kind of compare. Alright, I'm going to flag if I don't move almost instantly here. So, enough chatter. R4 and dumb. You may be dumb, but you are fast. Faster than me. I'm just kidding, man. You played very solidly. I think the queen trade probably should be omitted. But good king move. And you have the e3 square is a good square for your king. I can't say white is lost here. I would prefer black. I prefer black. But I wouldn't say that white is necessarily lost here. Just because of these bad pawns. May not be enough. Now a5 gives them some counterplay, but I'm on the way here. I don't know. I also had knight b7 is an interesting move for me. I can do that next move as well. We've got Sophia Rogers coming up in a game or two, and I know that they're a tough player. Here, now I'm picking off the c-pawn, so I finally made it to like a fully winning position. White doesn't have to resign because they lost one pawn. I mean, I'm resigning against Kamsky here. I notoriously resigned against Kamsky once when I lost a pawn. Even some grandmasters were shocked. But I said, like, come on. It's Kamsky, you know? This guy lives for being up a pawn. It was at Foxwoods. I was playing a lot of poker at the time. I just didn't see a reason to torture myself down a pawn against Kamsky. But generally speaking, we don't resign when we're one pawn down. There's usually hope, you know, to to continue the game. When you've got a guy who just lives for being a pawn up and is like technically perfect, then I think you can resign. Okay, so Samanam and Dave Tayan, I think they're later. Bourbon or Sophia Rogers. I'm going to throw in the game with Bourbon, Sophia, then we'll play. I'm not sure which one of you guys challenged me first. Bourbon, I think, is new to the stream. And I think everyone will enjoy the game with Sophia. Sophia's a strong player, master level in Blitz, at least. I don't know how good you are rating-wise. So, GM Werewolf, thanks for joining the stream. I don't find Magnus boring per se, but boring compared to other world champions. Like, well, his greatest two predecessors, shall we say. Compared to Garry Kasparov and Bobby Fischer, Magnus is boring. That's all I can say. You know, compared to the everyday chess player and everyday master, Magnus is not boring. You know, but we have high expectations after Fischer and Kasparov. So, all right. Magnus is, I said yesterday, he's the product of the chess world. I mean, he's a practical player. You know, he's a very practical player. Kramnik is also boring. But there are some players at the top who I wouldn't classify as boring. You know, Anish Giri, he needs some work, but he's not a boring player. Caruana is not a boring player. Okay, we haven't played this in ages. Classical King's Indian with white. Bourbon 53. Going back in my repertoire. The fact that you can compare Magnus to Kasparov and Fischer. I just said what I think. It's a different time, you know. Magnus is a product of the generation. I don't think that anybody could become world champion necessarily playing as sharply as Kasparov and Fischer could now, you know, in today's world. I'm not sure you could play as sharply as they did and be world champion. Who knows? Maybe somebody will prove it wrong. So, in this position, knight d2, knight b3. Dragonoid, what did you do wrong in the previous game? Dragonoid, was that you? The last game? Dragonoid, was it you in that English Nimzo type position there? What I played last game? So, you guys have any other topics for conversation chess-wise? I'm not right about everything. I mean, you guys are entitled to your opinion that Carlsen is an exciting player. But I mean, Sophia Rogers has a point about, like, you can't really compare Fischer. Well, I agree in general. Like, I'm not trying to compare their strengths. I think comparing their strengths wouldn't be fair. I think we can compare the level of how exciting their styles are, though. I think we can compare that, no? I mean, it's fair to compare that. I'm not saying that Fischer and Kasparov were better players. I'm saying their styles were more exciting to watch. But that's my opinion. Topalov is even more exciting, but he goes over the edge, for example, you know? I mean, he plays sometimes blatantly bad plans, trying to play very dynamically. There's a lot of Topalov fans. He almost, you know, technically was like the strongest player in the world at some point when Kasparov had quit. Topalov Leko. Okay, knight f5. What's going on here? Normally black gets back the pawn on a5 in this kind of line. I'm not real excited about